the Star. All right, and now let's take a look at the Star, where we have the headline on, not the Star, sorry, the Daily Nation. And on the Daily Nation, the headline that we have is Clash of Ideas. And again, this is to do with the manifestos that were launched both by Jubilee and by NASA, and we have the president and the presidential candidate for NASA, Raila Odinga, basically tearing into each other's plans and manifestos. And on the front page of the Daily Nation, you've got corruption, food security, infrastructure, and the economy, which is a subject that we're going to be looking at on the State of the Nation. We'll be looking at the real difference between the two manifestos and whether we should trust either of the leaders, given that they have both had opportunities to make a difference. Have they made a difference? Well, we shall wait to see how that goes as we discuss on the State of the Nation. We also have that same story on page 5, where graft lords are funding NASA according to Uhuru Kenyatta. Karua Waiguru, choice is yours according to the voters. Then ministry seeks to end strike. This is the NASA's strike, and the principal secretary filed papers in court terming NICE's industrial action premature as talks on CBA are still going on. So, of course, that strike still goes on, and it forms the basis of our question this morning, question of the day, or rather our question this morning. And the question that we're asking is whether you feel that the NASA strike has been accorded the necessary state attention that it requires, the necessary state attention that it requires. Do let us know what your thoughts are. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, it's time for the Dawn Debate, and we'll be looking at matters education and that which has been promised by the incumbent government and also by NASA as regards education. We're going to leave you with images of traffic that is on the Kenyatta Avenue roundabout, and there you have it, looking not too bad, flowing and flowing well. So we'll take a short break. When we come back, it's time for the Dawn Debate. Right, and well, there you have it, traffic on Kenyatta Avenue, right there.
This is KTN News.
Teachers do not participate in any campaigns and would not wish to be dragged into such. And therefore, I'm sounding warning to those who are campaigning, to those who are seeking votes from members of public. Some names of people like professional teachers should not be dragged into such.
Mtindo nilioona wakati nilikuwa nimechukua msimamo ule, nikaona ni mtindo ambao hauna mwelekeo. Mtindo ambao huenda udumishe shida katika chama cha KANU. Mtindo ambao huenda ukaeneza ukabila katika taifa letu. Kwa hivyo nikaona ni heri kama kiongozi nifikirie upili na nirudi nyuma na niseme yangu ya kibinafsi haiwezi kushinda ya Wakenya wote.
Standard Newspaper keeps you locked all week with our electrifying magazines. On Sunday, we have Generation Next, Twinkle and Sunday. On Monday, catch up with Crazy Monday. Tuesday, get Financial Standard. Wednesday, we have Hustle. Thursday, hashtag is the one to read. Friday, get a life with Pulse. And Saturday, Eve winds up the week. It's now more inclusive, informative, concise, colorful, and more entertaining. The Standard. Feel the change.
I must register my disappointment that 3 state parties have decided to withdraw from the statute. While acceding or withdrawing from any treaty is a sovereign act that duly deserves respect, any act that may undermine the global movement towards greater accountability for atrocity crimes and a rule-based international order in this new century is surely, when objectively viewed, regrettable. Despite the sensational headlines, this is not a crisis for the Most High system, but a setback in our joint efforts towards achieving a more peaceful, a more just world.
This is KTN News.
His Excellency Hassan Ali Joho, Governor Mombasa County, has granted a 70% waiver on penalties, interest on all residential and commercial properties. You're hereby notified to clear outstanding dues before the notice lapses, failure to which the county government shall initiate recovery through legal proceedings and even repossession of defaulters' land. Note, the waiver is to 15th July and shall not be extended further. Payments can be made at the below bank account. Banking slip should be submitted for issuance of official receipt at the Mombasa County Assembly Buildings, Treasury Square.
The results speak for themselves. With over 20 billion shillings now successfully delivered into the hands of the most vulnerable members of our society every single year.
In the concrete jungle, the predator makes all the rules. Where are you on the food chain? Inspector Fisi, only on KTN.
I must register my disappointment that 3 state parties have decided to withdraw from the statute. While acceding or withdrawing from any treaty is a sovereign act that duly deserves respect, any act that may undermine the global movement towards greater accountability for atrocity crimes and a rule-based international order in this new century is surely, when objectively viewed, regrettable. Despite the sensational headlines, this is not a crisis for the Mombasa system, but a setback in our joint efforts towards achieving a more peaceful, a more just world.
Every Thursday, we talk politics.
Kwenye jukwaa la KTN tunaangazia matukio ya siasa za uchaguzi kuanzia mwendo wa saa 12 hadi saa 1 jioni.
Mimi napanga stima.
Saa 1 hadi saa 2 kwenye KTN leo tunakujuza yanayojiri kutoka pande zote za Kenya.
Mudhama can talk whatever he wants to talk.
Mimi najua Kenya hii ina watu wa porojo.
We bring you an in-depth political check on the battlegrounds.
Mjinga akierefuka, mwerefu yuko mashaka.
Watulize ball. Uwanja ni mdogo.
From 9 to 10 p.m.
Miradi zote ambayo wanazindua.
Hii ni kazi ya serikali ya Mombasa.
Linda brings you up to date with the day's news across the country and the globe.
We analyze the regions and the counties.
Political Thursdays, 6 to 11 p.m. only on KTN News.
In the concrete jungle, the predator makes all the rules. Where are you on the food chain? Inspector Fisi, only on KTN.
This is KTN News.
It's now 17 minutes to 7. Now, the party manifestos of both NASA and Jubilee launched last week continue to elicit debate from various quarters. The two promise to offer the primary and secondary school education. A major difference is the timing, though. Quality and execution of the PAN remaining grey areas in the manifestos. On Don't Debate this morning, we're looking at the education and, let's first of all introduce the guests that I have in this morning. I have Riziki Dunstan, who's a political analyst, and Paul Awol, who's a lawyer. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
All right, we want to mainly look at the education sector because that's a big one, I think, for both the political parties and also for Kenyans, with both of them offering, or promising rather, free education right from primary to secondary education, but the timing being the main difference. Jubilee mentioning that theirs is going to start, I believe, in January or February, and NASA saying that they will start immediately they get into office. Let me start with you, Dunstan. Are those unrealistic promises they're making?
One thing about, for example, from a Jubilee perspective, one thing about Jubilee is that they have had the Clay Memorial Commission that has looked into the overhauling the education system as a whole. And the budgetary implications for all the free secondary education has been factored in the report of the Clay Memorial Commission. So as we start off from a Jubilee perspective, I think this country will be able to get free education from a Jubilee government because they have a plan. The pragmatism of the whole exercise is real, and it has budgetary implications. I'll give you a breakdown about the budgetary implication of free secondary education. For example, in the last 3 years, we have been having a subsidized kind of free education at the secondary school level. That has come with a budgetary cost implication of about budgetary implication about 3 billion shillings per financial year. Successively, when we want to implement it in a wholesome exercise, then we are going to have almost double the amount. That's about 66 or so billion shillings per year. That's looking at it from an objective perspective. We have to realize that for tuition fees and the infrastructural development, which has been factored in this 2018-2019 financial year, is that the government has already budgeted 3 billion shillings for tuition fees and other infrastructural projects. And Jubilee has also budgeted almost 7 billion shillings for infrastructure development at the secondary school level. So pragmatically looking at it, it can only happen early next year because already we have budgetary implications already and commitments to this financial year. Another issue, when you want to get money for, people are asking where will the government get the money for funding secondary school education? The source of funding is that we're just going to reduce the austerity, put in place austerity measures, to reduce excess spending, reduce the corruption levels in the government. We must appreciate that we are facing a lot of corruption levels at the government level. But if you reduce the austerity measures and also reduce corruption levels in government, then funding the school education will not be a big issue. With regards to the implementation of the Claiming Areas Commission, I think that's a starting point. When NASA says that they're going to do it in January, in September next year, this year, it's very unrealistic, bearing in mind that 2017-2018 budget was already passed in March.
So from your opinion, is that just that a promissory note that they're giving to the electorate to war them, but actually, possibly not
Actually, it is a blank promissory note to the extent that 2018 and 2019 budget, unless Jubilee promises us that they'll have a parliamentary majority in terms of numbers in the parliament, to have in place a supplementary budget that shall take care of the deficit in terms of the budgetary expectations of a free secondary education. But if you look at it wholesomely, having it done at once, having it done without staggering the whole exercise, it's all lies.
It's all lies.
Yes.
All right, Paul, to hear your thoughts on that.
I think the starting point should be, if you look at the NASA manifesto, you realize that the NASA manifesto is keen on implementing social things that NASA believes should actually be achieved. You look at the Jubilee manifesto, you realize that they are more keen on infrastructural things than the things that concern the society or the common man directly. And if you look actually at the pillar of the NASA the pillar of the NASA manifesto that actually deals with education, it is very clear on the issues and the key concerns they need to address. The main reason why I'm more likely to believe the NASA one than to believe the Jubilee one is that you look at the Jubilee manifesto, or you look at some of the things they promised, you realize that there were good promises being spoken by very charismatic people. Like, for example, they can't say that the NASA one can't be achieved when they promised to give school-going children in lower primary laptops.
But you see, two wrongs don't make a right. The fact that Jubilee did not deliver on their promise does not mean that now NASA should make promises that they cannot deliver.
What I'm actually saying with the NASA is that most of what NASA is saying is realistic, and actually they are guarantees. For example, you look at how they even are trying to say that we will address university loans through help. Jubilee are actually saying that they also want to do the same thing, but currently there are people in university who cannot even access those loans.
Okay, let's look at it. Since you're in support of the NASA education promise that they would deliver by September, practically speaking, is there a budget for that? Do we have anything that has been put in place by NASA that would ensure, because I mean, it is not just declaring.
I don't really think that NASA are actually saying that they will deliver by September, but they are saying that by September we will begin immediately. We don't need more time.
I think now we're paraphrasing it.
Yes, Dunstan. One thing about, I'll try to address the issues about the laptops and the digital learning, literacy learning program. The Jubilee government faced a lot of hurdles, and I think probably the hurdles were meant or engineered by the NASA brigade. One, we had a lot of court issues in terms of the tendering process, in terms of the procurement process, until it was difficult to deliver the laptop project in good time. But all said and done, they are doing it. That is one aspect. And when you look at the NASA manifesto, it's actually scrapping the entire digital learning program. Yet, Class 1, Class 2, the digital learning content is already in place. And scrapping such an exercise actually is a waste of government resources to one extent, that the previous government, when a new government comes to take over, is supposed to provide a level of continuity of their programs of whichever
Although
government.
it does not mean that if they come and take over, they should take over a program that is not profitable
Not
to
profitable
the
to
country.
them, but to the masses. You know, when you come up with a program or with a policy framework that's supposed to help the masses, then the policy framework should not only look at the interest of the party in place or the coalition in place, but look at wholesomely the investment that have been put in, look at wholesomely the futuristic approach towards that investment, towards the whole education sector as a whole. That is one. Secondly, about higher education loans board. It is a fallacy that today the NASA is promising to scrap, to waive all the interests that has been issued to all the loans on the interests that have been issued to students in that matter. But rather, Jubilee is promising to double the allocation of the allocation to the higher education loans board. That is one approach. Secondly, if you double the allocation, then you ensure that these people, the students who are, or the graduates from the universities, are employed or are given internship programs, their apprenticeship programs through the government framework. Then these students will be able to acquire enough skills, requisite skills, and also be able to be employed in good time. Then they'll be able to pay off these loans in good time. That is one approach. Secondly, when you look at the operation of the Higher Education Loans Board and the entire board, the board operates on the interests accrued from the loans. Is actually the interest accrued from the loans helps in the administrative costs of the Higher Education Loans Board. Therefore, if you say today that we are waiving off all the interest, is actually a blatant lie, because the board, it means first of all NASA Brigade do not understand on what premises the higher education
is.
What is the value, or what is the value of the interests that is accrued on the loans that students get? Okay. The interests actually help in the operationalization of the entire workforce at the commission level. That's paying staff, administrative costs. That's where the interest goes. If NASA says today that they will waive off all the interest, it's a lie, because how will the board operate?
Okay, let me hear from Paul.
Basically, I think maybe he doesn't really understand where NASA is coming from. NASA is coming from a social justice base where they believe that certain things should be guaranteed to all Kenyans, regardless of your economic status or where you come from. And NASA is clear that things like health, education, should not be so much expensive that if you're coming from Turkana, if you're coming from Wajir.
And that is fine. That is okay, because that's what social justice is all about. The key question here is on implementation. The promise that, and specifically on education, they have made a promise that by September, if we go to the polls and all goes well, August 8th is D-Day. So by September, we're looking at actually less than a month. About a month to have the whole education system paid for by government. And the question is, how is that going to be implemented? Is there a budget for that? And then the other difference is, with NASA, they have said that they're talking about the full education fees, from tuition to boarding to food, all that is going to be paid for. How is that going to be done?
Basically, if you look at what NASA is saying, NASA are actually saying that there's money in this country, only that it is being used for things that are not immediate and things that don't benefit normal wananchi. For example, NASA have actually argued that, one, was it an immediate need to go for the laptops? Was it an immediate need to spend the kind of money we spent on SGR? So what NASA are actually saying that, yes, there are some things even within this budget that we can actually take and use that money for what actually matters as at now. Jubilee government have started very many things and very many projects. Some of them you ask themselves, like even, for example, you saw during the NASA launch, they were asking, what is the need of building SGR to Naivasha into somebody's farm? Meaning they're saying...
And would like to separate the political statements that are made and what is practical. And we want to look at the practical right now. And what you have said is true. As per NASA's statements, yes, there's a lot of government expenditure that is unnecessary. Yes, there's a lot of pilferage of monies that is not necessary. But when we come back to the promise that they're making, are they not misdirecting Kenyans or deceiving Kenyans, to call a spade, by saying that by September, the education system will be paid for, yet there are no structures in place?
Basically, what they are saying is that, given the goodwill that there is there, and given that they are keen on it, because I'll actually tell you, I've even been looking at the security budget. The security budget under Jubilee government has been at consistent 38% of the national budget. They're actually saying it is possible to reduce the security budget from even 38 to 30%, and the 8% we use to take care of this education. What they're actually saying, that even education, to address education, you can't actually begin with a laptop when you don't even still have classrooms. So what NASA are actually saying is that, yes, there is money. We can agree on how to utilize it to begin building the education sector as early as September. Because they're even saying that, you look at the loans, it's possible. There are very many countries, even I've spoken with my parents. My parents are telling me when they went to the university, the government took care of their expenses because they were smart and bright. Right now, it's not important how smart and bright you are unless you have money.
All right. One thing about Jubilee Manifesto in terms of education specifically, with the realization of what education, free secondary education is all about. First of all, Jubilee government, you have to start from a point of known to unknown. Jubilee government has tried in terms of implementation at this moment in time. Secondly, as a government, Jubilee government has commissioned Kilemi Muria's commission to come up with reforms in the entire education sector. And one of those reforms were about free secondary education and TVET education and university education as a whole. Thus, it is important that probably NASA could have been telling us at this moment in time that we have done our cost estimate in the education sector. And we think that as a NASA government, we shall be able to implement free secondary education with these costs. We must put our cost-effective figures in terms of what the budget estimation of the education sector. Therefore, we cannot just wake up in the morning, say that, okay, we have we have this number of students going to secondary school education, then we will be able to offer it at this level without giving us a cost figures in terms of estimation. To tell us 8% from the security sector, I think that is a fallacy, and we should not actually move on with that kind of argument. That trajectory is misleading to our viewers and to our nation, that we can implement free secondary education without necessarily coming up with real figures. Know that how much will a student in Form 1 require for uniform. Know that how much will a student in Form 1 require for school feeding program, for example. Know that at how much will a student in Form 1 require for books, textbooks. If you're saying it's free, is it realistic? That is a lie. Mike, let us not take that trajectory as a nation, because we must be realistic. We must say that, for example, right now the government is giving a subsidy of 12,000 shillings per student. What will be the cost effectiveness? What will be the infrastructural projects for these students, this number of students at secondary school level in this number of years? Okay. You get? Then secondly, on education sector, Jubilee government has done so much. They're actually overhauling the whole education system, in the sense that we want to put in a content base and value base so that we produce people.
All right, we need to finish, but I need your comment on Jubilee, because as much as they have done all that so far, yes, they have had 5 years to basically overhaul the education system, yes, but they've not done much. They've promised free education, and right now, if we did a survey, even an internal one, you'd probably find there are very few parents, if any, who actually can say education is free. They're still paying in one way or the other, whether it is books or that. Is it okay? Would you agree that Jubilee so far has failed in that sector?
I won't agree entirely. I will say, as a country, we are a young and growing democracy, and our economy is also still growing. We have to do many things at one go. And if you have to do many things at one go, then let us prioritize our projects in terms of what we want to achieve. That is one point. Secondly, Jubilee has done so much in terms of recruitment of teachers. It is the first government, actually since independence, that between 2013 and 2016, Jubilee government recruited, TSA employed more than 16,000 numbers of teachers. So if you look at education sector, let us not look at it from half empty glass perspective, but rather than look at it from a wholesome perspective, in the sense that what are these infrastructural projects that this country needs in terms of development of the education sector, both from the free education and the infrastructure that the government needs to put in place to ensure that education is realistic, achievable, and actually it's not a favor.
All right, Paul, I need your closing comments.
Basically, Jubilee have had the opportunity to address the education sector. They've not been keen. First of all, they've not been keen on education. Look at the number of strikes we've had. look at how much money they've put into education. 3, even if you look like he's mentioning so confidently the Kilemi-Miller report. The Kilemi-Miller report was a very progressive report. They've not implemented even 10% of what the Kilemi-Miller was suggesting in this report and the recommendations. Jubilee are more keen on promises, very less on implementation. Right. Because you ask yourself, when was the Kilemi-Miller report, when did it come? What has delayed the implementation of the Kilemi-Miller report? And you realize that they had all the opportunity. If they were really keen on education, they would have.
Thank you, gentlemen. We'll have to wind it up right there because of time. Riziki Dunstan, who's a political analyst, and also Paul Owl, who's a lawyer. This is, well, that was the Dawn debate, and we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we've got some news.